Approximately 280 million people have depression around the world. For some people, it's more permanent, and for myself, it's called SAD, also known as seasonal affective disorder, which basically just means I'm depressed sometimes. And that can lead to things like lower energy, a lower mood, and even weight gain. Now you might be thinking, well, Brax, it's probably because you haven't left the basement since Camellya was announced. And maybe you're right. But recently I've actually been on the up and up. After finally standing up to open a window, there's nothing in my pockets. I'm just happy to see her. Camellya is finally here, and she's going to take your seed. And that includes women. You can ask Mina Aoyama about that one. But don't ask Mina for build advice, because you'll get that here, since I'm gonna be going over everything you need to know about Camellya, from how she plays to how to build her. My name is Braxophone, but you can call me Brax, and let's talk about Camellya. Camellya is like Lust from ReZero, except you won't go to jail. She easily has one of the best designs we've seen from Kuro games, up there with Sanhua, Baiji, Zhizhi, Qixia, Changli, Yinlin, Yang Yang, Shortkeeper, Rovera. But on top of that, she's one of the strongest characters introduced into Wuthering Waves, and I mean at S0, even though most of you are skipping red for this. Camellya is a Havoc DPS that takes up a bunch of field time to whip you into shape. And thank God she's not an off-field support, because now we get to look at her. She has a white mode for when she shows you white, and a red mode for after she read your browser history. White mode is cool and all, but you know what's better than being flashed by a sadistic dancer woman? Being flashed by a sadistic dancer woman in midair. Holy. I do not know where those red strings are coming from. White mode lets you do an incredibly flashy attack combo, while red mode makes you a majority of your time on Camellya you'll spend in the red mode, since that's what a majority of her damage is from. And it gives her an extra energy regen multiplier as well. While you're suspended in air, you can only dodge or attack to move, but you can hold down your basic attack button to perform your combo. Once you get to the third basic attack, if you're holding it down, you'll start spinning really fast. Like most gacha players, I'm illiterate, so I'm gonna show you what she does instead of reading her kit. Your spinning combo uses Forte Gauge, which are called Crimson Pistols in game. For every 10 that you spend, you gain a Crimson Bud and 4 Concerto Gauge. When you reach full Concerto, you unlock a special skill called Ephemeral, which gets a bonus for every Crimson Bud stack that you have. At the end of your combo, Camellya would do a little kick, and it should have been me. After casting your special enhanced skill, you get a Morbillion damage bonus on your next Hello, it is that time of the video again where I ask you to subscribe to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel. That would be very helpful for me, especially if you like my content. If you do not like my content, you probably shouldn't subscribe. I'll wait for you guys to hit that button right down there. Thanks. Ideally, you're gonna want to complete a full combo of hers twice per field time at S0. But to do that effectively, you'll want to grow a flower between two hills.
We must stay focused, brothers. We must stay focused.
Camellya's Resonance Liberation is like if Kaguya won in Naruto Shippuden, except she forgot about the hydrogen bomb that she hid inside the tree. She does a ton of damage, but she also gets Concerto Gauge. This lets you either swap Camellya off-field and proc her outro, which does a ton of damage if you used Ephemeral literally once. Or, if you don't swap her, you can play her actually how she's meant to be played. So basically, your goal is to spend all of your Forte Gauge spinning and fill up your Concerto Gauge until it's mostly full. Use her Resonance Liberation to do a ton of damage and finish filling up her Concerto Gauge, then cast Ephemeral, which gives you a Chinchillion V-Bucks, Skibidi Riz and Ohio Kaisanot damage multiplier for your next spinning attack sequence. Then save yourself the brain rot by switching off Camellya. I'll go more into Camellya's playstyle in the team section, but for now, just know that her skill, Forte Circuit, and Ultimate are the most important things to level up. Her extra passives are just damage bonuses, and you get them for free, so level for those as well. Wow, Camellya is very cool. I don't really know what to put here. Watch ReZero Season 3. There's actually a ton of misinformation about Camellya circulating the internet right now, so I'm here to set the record straight. The best way to build Camellya is with one hand. There are two sets of echoes that are good for Camellya. The first one is Sun Sinking Eclipse, which with 5 pieces gives Havoc damage bonus and more Havoc damage bonus. And the second is Lingering Tunes, which gives an attack bonus and outro skill damage. Sun Sinking Eclipse is always a good choice since Havoc damage is all of Camellya's damage. But considering that she gets 30% Havoc damage from passives, 50% damage bonus to most most of her abilities, and you'll also have 2 3-cost echoes that can have damage bonus, you end up with like 140 damage bonus without her weapon, which is higher than I scored on my SAT. So the attack percent set is actually pretty good. For 4-cost echoes, you want crit rate or damage, but rate is more consistent since a lot of her damage comes from one-hit nukes. For 3 costs, you'll want Havoc damage unless you have her signature weapon and are playing the Havoc set, in which case you can go 1 Havoc damage and 1 attack percent. And of course for the 1 costs, you'll want to give them attack percent bonus. With the Sun-Seeking Eclipse set, Dreamless is the way to go for your active echo, but you can also use Roseshroom if you don't have a good Dreamless, since it's low commitment for a little extra damage. With Lingering Tunes though, you'll want to use Mech Abomination for the attack buff and outro damage. Because Camellya has energy regen built into her kit, you only need around 120%, which is super easy to get in substats. The rest you'll definitely want going into crit rate and damage, and basic attack damage bonus isn't bad. Just for you guys and nobody else, here's a build summary for Camellya. Like I said, Camellya is flexible between those 2 echo sets since they both give her a lot of value. Either way, with investment, she's gonna do a ton of damage. The more I play Camellya, the more I realize this character was made for scene kids. Anyways, who's trying to go to Warp Tour? For women, I would do anything, and that includes pulling Red Spring for Camellya. Red Spring is her best in slot, and it looks gorgeous on her. Red Spring gives a passive attack buff, and makes it so whenever you deal basic attack damage, which is a majority of Camellya's kit, she gets a basic attack damage bonus. At max stacks, it's up to 30%, but on top of that, after you spend Concerto, you get another 40% basic attack damage bonus, which gives her a total of 70%, which, if you're unaware,
that's a lot of damage.
Other than that, there's also Emerald of Genesis for the crit and Blazing Brilliance for the stats. But before you swipe for her weapon, we're actually getting a new 4-star this patch that trumps her free-to-play options. Somme Noir Anchor is ridiculously good for her, and it's completely free if you do the event this patch, which means you don't have to spend at all. But I don't know how many of you that's gonna stop anyways. Overall, the event weapon is gonna make building crit super easy, and you can rank it up to max for free. If you miss the event though, you always have Looming Gloss and Commando of Conviction as decent weapons, but hopefully you can eventually upgrade. Here's a chart actually showing the difference in damage between weapons for Camellya. Content might change some things, but the main thing that's going to change your damage output is whether or not your bank account is frozen. Oh, and your rotation, which is what we're gonna get into next. You guys think those ropes ever like hurt the back of her knees? Or, oh, they're just coming from the front of her knees actually. You know what? That must feel kind of... Anyways, here we are on Red Camellya. Hello guys. I'm gonna teach you the rotation for Camellya and talk about some teams that she's good in. Does that sound good to you? Great, because that's what we're doing. So right off the bat, I'm just gonna get right into it. So Shorekeeper is upgraded Verena for a lot of characters. Sanhua is just a character that's been good since launch, and Camellya is the new character. So these 3 can form an excellent team. Let me tell you why. Shorekeeper essentially provides a ridiculous amount of buffs. For those of you who don't know, she gives crit rate and crit damage, but on top of that, she gives lots of other buffs, and she's a healer, and she's an off-field attacker. So Shorekeeper is an incredibly powerful unit, and she works well with Camellya. But the second character in this team is Sanhua, who a lot of you already know is a very solid character from multiple reasons. While Shorekeeper has some pretty cool buffs on her outro, including a damage amplify, Sanhua has a basic attack damage amplify by 38% for 14 seconds or until the character switched out. Now, this basically means if you're playing with Sanhua, you don't quick swap her, because as soon as you swap off of Camellya, you lose that buff on her. But 38% more damage is great on top of the 15% from Shorekeeper as well. But the reason Sanhua is good is because she has very low field time requirements. You can kind of just ER and get out of there. You can skill Resonance Liberation and then cut that in half, use your Echo and swap off really fast into Camellya, and you can maintain all these buffs, do high burst damage with Sanhua, get the basic attack damage bonus on Camellya, and then repeat 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Now, as I mentioned before, Shorekeeper is kind of like Verena. You can use Verena in this team and it works out just fine. In some situations and some teams, Verena can actually be better than Shorekeeper, but it just really depends. On this team, she's going to be strictly worse, unless you just have a way more invested Verena than you have Shorekeeper. But Verena does add a lot of buffs to this team, and one thing that makes Verena nice is that she has lesser field time, so you could actually switch out Sanhua for another character. That other character would be Dungeon if you decided to do so. And I have Shorekeeper here, but just for example's sake, we can talk about Verena as well. So if you had Verena and Dungeon, this team to me does feel strictly worse than this setup or even this setup, but it is a decent option, especially if your Sanhua is occupied on the other team that you're using for tower, then you can go ahead and play Dungeon. Now, the reason Dungeon's good is because she actually gives Havoc damage amplified by 23% for 14 seconds. So this is strictly worse than than Sanhwa's for Camellya, but it's still pretty solid. And like I said, Sanhwa is a pretty popular unit, so it's possible that your Sanhwa is occupied, in which case you can play Dungeon, or if you just have Dungeon invested in. Verena is good for this because Dungeon takes up more field time than Sanhwa, so you can kind of shorten, tighten up these rotations a little bit by playing Verena here, but it is going to be strictly worse. And honestly, even when it comes down to Verena and Shorekeeper is going to do better in this team. So overall, this is the ideal team in my opinion, but you can play other characters as well, like Verena and Dungeon. And then some other characters that also can work in some situations are Yinlin and Zhizha. Zhizha is just like a good character. Like I really don't know what to say about her other than that, because the Glacier damage amplify doesn't really matter. The skill damage amplify is like kind of whatever compared to the basic attack damage amplify. It's not going to be like insanely different, but Zhizha does offer some pretty good off-field damage and even on-field damage when she is up there. And if you're playing a character that happens to buff basic attacks across the board for your whole party, let's say they introduce a support that's just like straight up healing and basic attack damage amplify for the whole party, Zhizha and Camellya would be an insane combo, because Zhizha is doing basic attack damage with the Resonance Liberation, and Camellya is also doing a ton of basic attack damage. Yinlin's a little weird because in most cases you want to swap her in and out, but in this case you can just keep her on field, swap her off, give the Resonance Liberation damage amplify, which the Liberation is going to be a lot of damage for Camellya as well. But typically I would just recommend these three. All right, so this goes really fast. So I'm going to show you in slow motion, or my attempt at slow motion, how you actually play this character. So first, let me just go ahead and get her outro skill procced on Shorekeeper and a Resonance Liberation, right? I'm gonna swap over to Sanhwa. We're gonna E and Resonance Liberation right away. This is gonna be the fastest part of the entire rotation, right? Because you don't need to stay on her. Okay, so now that Camellya is on the field, right? We've procced the outros of everyone. We want to go ahead and use our skill. This puts us into red mode, and we start swinging. All right, and anyways, I started swinging, right? You just go for it. You can go ahead and use an extra skill at the end here if you want, and then you want to use her Resonance Liberation. And you can actually do this in really close succession. That's gonna proc Ephemeral, which is now our enhanced skill. We can use it now. Boom, tons of damage. And then you wanna go back into red mode. So now we're back in red mode. We're starting our second sequence, our second cycle of spins. And we're gonna land that kick. You can skill once more if you have it. And then you can either, if you have Dreamless, you can use that right before you swap off, or you can use, if you have Rose Shroom, you can use that before you swap off as well. That'll be some extra damage. So let me show you this in real time. So in this run, I'm just gonna do everything at normal speed just to kind of show you guys what it looks like. I'll also try to call out exactly when you'd use each echo because they all have different timings. Wow, very cool. Resonance Liberation. Very nice. We're gonna go and proc our outro, go straight into Sanhwa and cut them up. Do that and dash through them. Heron, swap to Camellya. We're gonna go Rose Shroom, and we're gonna instantly skill, start going at them. Just like that, super fast. And if you had Mech Abomination, you'd use it right here before you Resonance Liberation to try to get that extra damage. It is what it is. We wasted a ton of damage there, but you know, sometimes life be like that, you know. Sometimes the enemy has 3,000 HP, and you need a little bit extra of a push, a little bit extra 200,000 damage to kill the 1k HP enemy. So we're gonna go ahead and just start smacking this guy. Resonance Liberation, about the Sanhwa. Now, honestly, guys, because I'm talking, I feel like I am playing so much worse, but I hope, if nothing else, you guys are sort of seeing how this character plays. So we're gonna go ahead and go into red mode immediately. We're gonna start hitting the boss, and he's actually down, so he's taking more damage. If we had Mech Abomination, we'd use it right here, but we don't, so that is totally okay. Ephemeral, boom, and we can honestly just keep going because I didn't use their skill afterwards, so we're still in the red mode. We can Rose Shroom straight into Shorekeeper, and now we can actually cut this rotation short because the boss is pretty low HP, so it's not really that important for us to do the full uptime or anything because he's already so low, so this will be a faster clear. Go ahead and do this, swap to Camellya, skill, and we won't have our Resonance Liberation, but look at us just kind of like swipe away at this guy if he was within my range. That is unfortunate. That's okay because I skilled him. So there you go. Just two spinny rotations each time, and it should be good. And once again, just depending on the set of echoes that you're using, if you're using Rose Shroom because you don't have a good Dreamless, you drop one at the beginning before you go into red mode, and you can dodge to hit the floor faster after you proc that intro, and then one right before you switch off, and that should add a little bit of damage. If you're using Dreamless, you want to use it right at the end of the rotation, and if you're using Mech Abomination, you want to use it right before Resonance Liberation. All in all, guys, I feel like Camellya is like such a free-to-play friendly character, but she's also very very fluid and fun to play when the enemy doesn't walk outside your range. Now, unfortunately, there is a counter to Camellya, and that is the enemy having legs. So if they have legs, don't pull for this character. But nah, guys, she's pretty good. She's pretty easy to play. If you guys want live tutorials, make sure to check out my Twitch. For those of you trying not to spend on Camellya, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're cooked. Kuro Games decided, rather than break you of your fetish, we are actually going to lock you in a bunker with it. Camellya's S1 gives her a crit damage buff after her intro skill, and also makes her ephemeral cast immune to interruptions. It's not the craziest buff in her kit, but you'll feel the difference. What makes a huge difference though is her S2, which increases the damage of her ephemeral cast. Wait, did I say damage? I meant damage multiplier. Oh, you thought for a second that was a small buff? No, it's actually f***ing disgusting. Her S3 by comparison is a decent buff as well, with an increase to her damage multiplier on her resonance liberation, and after she uses ephemeral, she gets a 58% attack buff. These stats are honestly just crazy. S4 gives your whole team a 25% basic attack damage bonus for 30 seconds, which is a classic S4 support moment. S5 doesn't seem like that crazy of a sequence node, but it's decent. It increases the multiplier of her intro and outro skills. S6, however, is gonna put Wuthering Waves high enough on the gacha revenue charts to give me a free video. S6 increases her Forte Circuit's damage multipliers by a ridiculous 150%, and also gives Camellya a new enhanced skill called Perennial, which can be used in the same way as Ephemeral after Ephemeral has been cast and the requirements are met. After Perennial, it increases the damage multipliers even more, and I'm gonna keep it real with you guys, you don't need to read all that. You know how you guys normally use twice? With S6, you could use it 3 times before swapping, and it does way more damage the 3rd time. And even if you keep your rotation similar or her field time the same, it's still a massive damage increase. To give you guys some perspective, usually these sorts of things increase damage bonus or give attack buffs or resistant shred in some other games. The reason Camellya's sequence nodes are so strong is because they increase the initial multiplier that's used in damage calculations. Going from S0 to S2, you could see as much as a 40% damage increase, and going from S0 to S6, you could see up to 170% more damage. Camellya is probably the only thing that could have got me to swipe on this game, and I think it worked. Between her weapon and sequence nodes though, just to calm things down, her R1 weapon will be a bigger upgrade than S1, but her S2 will be a much bigger increase than her R1. Usually I'd recommend just doing the weapon though, since it gives you more options for other characters. To be clear, Camellya is an insanely strong character at S0 with a free to play weapon, so you do not have to pull for extra copies of her or her weapon, and you will be totally fine and able to clear all the end game content. These deranged gacha women won't hurt you, but spending money will, and I wish it was the other way around. Oh yeah, for those of you who are still watching, I might give away a free S6 Camellya account since I don't really want to break free to play on my main, but I haven't decided. S6 is gonna happen one way or another, and if you want to see it happen live or be a part of the giveaway if that happens, follow my Twitch and turn notifications on. That'll let you know right when I go live with it, and it'll probably be on the day Camellya drops. Subscribe.